Kia ora, good morning everyone, Won here, welcome back to the channel. Recently on this channel, we already had a look at a few VIltrox full frame autofocus lenses for Nikon Z camera. And today we are going to have a look at another lens from VIltrox, and this time it is this AF23 f1.4 lens that is designed for Nikon Z APS-C cameras. I'm going to share with you my shooting experience, my test results, and also some real-world photos that I shot with this lens. You may remember that I have reviewed the VIltrox 24 1.8 Z lens not too long ago. This is a lens that is very similar to this 23 1.4 lens. The 24mm VIltrox is a full frame lens, but of course it will work perfectly fine on a APS-C Nikon Z camera. So I imagine some of you that looking at buying this AF23 1.4 lens may also be curious if you should buy the AF24 1.8 lens instead. So I'm also going to do some comparison between these two lenses and see which is the better buy for Nikon shooters. This VIltrox AF23 1.4 lens is a smallish, fast prime lens that has autofocus and full electronic support. The price is pretty affordable at just $329 US, so it is one of the cheapest autofocus prime lens for Nikon Z mount, and it is $100 cheaper than the VIltrox 24 1.8 lens. The lens has a metal body and also a metal lens mount, and the weight of the lens is only 300 grams. It is not a weather sealed lens, but the front element has a special coating to protect it against raindrops and dirt. The front filter thread is 52mm, and the lens comes with this metal reversible lens hood. The lens hood feels very solid, very nice, especially when you click the lens hood onto the lens. It just feels very satisfying. There is a USB-C connector on the lens mount for firmware update, and as I've mentioned many times before, VIltrox is pretty good at releasing new firmware for their products, and I quite often see them release new firmware for their lenses as well. Apart from the big manual focus ring at the front here, which can be customized to control other settings just like a native Nikon Z lens, there is also an aperture ring at the back of the lens. The aperture ring is a declicked aperture ring, just like the aperture ring on the other VIltrox autofocus lenses. You guys know that I much prefer aperture ring that has clicks, so I really wish VIltrox can implement a switchable aperture ring design in the future. But anyway, you can change the aperture smoothly from the maximum aperture f1.4 all the way to the minimum aperture f16, and then there is a soft stop at f16, and if you rotate past it, then you can get to the A position, which means you can now control the aperture from the camera body instead. Overall, in terms of design and build quality, VIltrox has done a fantastic job, and there really isn't much that I can complain, maybe apart from the declicked aperture ring. And if you are considering the VIltrox 24mm f1.8 lens, let's put these two lenses side by side and have a look together. I won't say there is any significant difference in terms of size, but the full frame 24mm lens is surely a little bit bigger. And while the build quality and design of these two lenses are almost the same, the 24mm lens body has a cylinder shaped design, while the 23mm lens, it is a little bit narrower near the front of the lens, and then the diameter of the lens increase a bit when it get close to the aperture ring. Because of that, the 23mm lens feels a little bit better when I hold it in my hands. The weight of the 24mm lens is 370 grams, so it is still not a heavy lens, but it is almost 25% heavier than the VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens. The VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens uses stepping autofocus motor, and the autofocus speed is pretty decent when I test it on the Nikon Z50. Eye phase autofocus works pretty much the same as a native Nikon Z lens, and overall the autofocus performance is really good, and the autofocus operation is also pretty quiet as well. So it's really nice to see third-party lenses manage to have such nice and smooth autofocus performance. When it comes to close focus capability, the VIltrox 23 f1.4 lens has a maximum magnification ratio of 0.1 time, and the minimum focus distance is 0.3 meter. So not really high magnification at all, and interestingly the figures are exactly the same as the VIltrox 24mm f1.8 lens. Now let's have a look at the image sharpness, and as usual let's start with the center sharpness. The center sharpness of this VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens is very good at the maximum aperture already. I can see a bit of chromatic aberration, but otherwise the center looks great at f1.4. Stopping down the lens to f2.8, sharpness is pretty much the same, but chromatic aberration is no longer noticeable. Compare it with the 24mm f1.8 lens. At f1.8, the 23mm lens is actually sharper, but once you stop down the lens, then these two lenses are virtually identical in terms of center sharpness. If you look at the corner, the VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens corner at f1.4 is a bit soft. Stopping down the lens would slowly improve the corner sharpness. At f4, the corner sharpness becomes decent. If we compare the corner with the VIltrox 24 f1.8 lens, the 23mm lens is slightly sharper at the same aperture setting. This is a bit surprising, as I thought the full frame 24mm lens would be sharper at the APS-C corner, but my test results shows the opposite. With this VIltrox 23mm lens large f1.4 maximum aperture, you can dissolve the background quite a bit when you are taking, say, half body portrait photos or most kind of close-up or semi-close-up photos. Bokeh from this VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens looks alright. It doesn't render the smoothest bokeh, and sometimes there is a bit of highlight at the edge of the bokeh balls, especially when shooting at f1.4. But look at most of my real-world photos, the background looks quite pleasing, so I don't really have any complaint about the bokeh, and when stopping down the lens, the bokeh balls still remain quite rounded. And if we compare it with the 24 f1.8 lens, since the 23mm lens is a f1.4 lens and the 24mm lens is a f1.8 lens, so there is a 2/3 stop difference in terms of maximum aperture. However, in real life, the difference in depth of field is really not that big. Here are some side-by-side comparison photos that I shot at the maximum aperture with both lenses. To be honest, if I don't look at the metadata, it would take me a little bit of time to tell which photo was shot at f1.4 and which one was shot at f1.8. If you compare the photos both shot at f1.8, they look very similar. The bokeh from the 24mm lens is slightly smoother. With the VIltrox 23mm lens at f1.4, vignetting is really quite noticeable, a bit more than expected for sure. When stopped down to f1.8, it becomes a lot better. The 24mm lens at f1.8 has a lot less vignetting than the 23mm lens. I guess it's probably because the 24mm lens is a full frame lens, so its image circle is a lot larger. So when you use it on an APS-C camera, then there is almost no vignetting. And as we stop down the lens, the VIltrox 24mm lens continue to have much less vignetting than the 23mm lens at the same aperture setting. Chromatic aberration is reasonably well controlled by the VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens. Even when shooting some very high contrast scene, I only get quite a low level of chromatic aberration. One interesting thing is, when I check the comparison photos that I shot with the 23mm lens and 24mm lens, both at f1.8, the chromatic aberration from these two lenses look very similar. The amount of color fringing is almost identical in a lot of my comparison photos. In terms of distortion, here are some brick wall test photos that I shot with both the VIltrox 23 and 24mm lenses. When I bring them into Lightroom, I was quite surprised because I see almost no distortion at all with both the photo that shot on 23 and 24mm lens. Then I realized Lightroom has already automatically applied profile correction for me, and it's something that I cannot turn off. Well, not without a bit of work. Okay, so here are the photos that I strip out the lens profile so there is no distortion correction applied. Without the distortion correction, now we can see a bit of barrel distortion with both lenses. I think the amount of distortion is still quite minor, and between these two lenses, the 24mm lens appears to have slightly more distortion. Both these lenses have pretty decent lens flare performance. Most of my photos, I see very minimal amount of lens flare. When I check the side-by-side comparison footage, I notice usually the 23mm f1.4 lens has a little bit more ghosting than the 24mm f1.8 lens. With the 23mm VIltrox lens, stopping down the lens to f5.6 and you could start to see Sunstars in the photo. But the Sunstars seems to be a bit non-symmetrical and it has some irregular shape. This becomes more apparent as you further stop down the lens. At f16, you can see some of the Sunstar tails are much longer than the other tails. It looks a bit messy to me, to be honest. Compared with the 24mm lens, I won't say I love the Sunstars from the 24mm lens, but I think at least it looks cleaner and just more tidy than the Sunstars from the 23mm lens. If you want to do some astrophotography, both the VIltrox 23 and 24mm lens has quite a bit of Coma at the maximum aperture. And for both these two lenses, you will need to stop down to around f2.8, then Coma becomes not really obvious. The VIltrox 23mm lens video autofocus works really well with the Nikon Z50. Even when filming at the maximum aperture f1.4, autofocus tracking is very responsive and very smooth as well. The camera follows my movement almost perfectly. I think autofocus tracking is even more responsive than the Nikon Z 40mm f2 lens that I have just reviewed recently. The autofocus noise is also kept at a very minimal level. So unless you are going to do some filming in a super quiet place using the built-in microphone, otherwise you would never hear any autofocus noise. The autofocus motor on the 24mm f1.8 lens is marginally louder than the 23mm lens. But when I said marginally, I really mean marginally, as it is still really quiet, and if you are filming outdoor, you will not hear any autofocus noise with any of these two lenses. Focus breathing is quite well controlled by both lenses as well. Check out this side-by-side footage where the focus shifts from 1 meter to about 15 meters and back and forth. The amount of focus breathing is really quite minor. After testing a few VIltrox autofocus lenses for Nikon Z mount recently, I have some idea and also some expectation of what I can get from this VIltrox AF 23mm f1.4 lens, and after all this testing, I think it meet my expectation. Very solid build quality, excellent autofocus performance. The lens performs pretty much exactly the same like a native Z-mount lens from Nikon. The image quality is overall pretty decent as well. Since there are not that many compact autofocus lenses for Nikon Z-mount APS-C cameras, this VIltrox 23mm f1.4 is definitely a very nice addition for Nikon shooters. Now, should you get this VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens or the 24mm f1.8 lens? This is actually a lot harder to answer than I originally expected. Build quality, autofocus performance, and even the image quality is really similar between these two lenses. I thought there would be some bigger difference, but no, the difference is really quite small and it's not one-sided as well. To me, I think the biggest difference is the 23 f1.4 lens is a bit smaller and lighter and also quite a bit cheaper, and it also has a slightly faster maximum aperture than the 24 f1.8 lens. So I think if you don't already have and not really planning to get a full frame Nikon Z camera in the near future, I would go with the VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens, as you can have a slightly smaller camera setup and it is just a little bit better value for money. However, if you are likely to get a full frame Z camera in the foreseeable future, then get the 24mm f1.8 lens, which is a good way for you to future-proof yourself. So what do you guys think about these two lenses? Which one is the one that you would want to get? Let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next video.